Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates.
And welcome to Revolution Radio. I'm Paul Stevenson, and this is Friday, the 20th of April, 2018. Welcome to the show. Beautiful, hot, sunny day here in London, England, where I am. I will be live with you for the next 2 hours. That's 2 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, 7 to 9 p.m. here in London, in the UK, where I am. And I am delighted to say, live with me for the first hour today, I have E. Michael Jones. Mike is the editor of Culture Wars magazine, public speaker, and author of books such as The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit and Barren Metal. Are you with me, Mike?
Yes, Paul.
Are you? Yes, you too. It's good to see you. Good to have you on. I haven't. It's probably been a few months since we spoke.
Yes, I believe so.
You've been busy. I did spot you on Press TV last week after the initial Syria attacks.
I've been staying at home, working on the book on Logos. Haven't traveled much.
Okay, after what we're going to do, the first part of the story, the first part of the show, we'll look at all this Syria stuff, the whole geopolitical stuff, and then we'll get into, I suppose, how this plays out, for want of a better word, on this in a spiritual way, and we'll get on to Logos in your book. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, all right. So, if the mainstream media and the Western leaders are saying Assad carried out a chemical attack, we can pretty much rule that out as a realistic option. It's highly unlikely, I would say, even though it's highly likely over here as a means to actually go and bomb a sovereign nation. My understanding and my suspicion from this is, did it even happen at all, Mike? I mean, these sorts of things are quite easy to stage, and it seems from other non-Western media outlets, it seems that it has been just a totally staged event and no one was actually gassed, or no chemicals were used.
Well, initially, I thought that there might have been a poison gas attack. I immediately felt that there was no reason whatsoever that Assad would do this, because a week before, Donald Trump had announced that he was wanted to withdraw American troops from Syria. That gave Assad no reason to act, but it gave the deep state in the United States and the United Kingdom and France and NATO, gave them a reason to act. So I originally thought their proxies, ISIS, in that last redoubt in Duma, had staged a poison gas attack. But apparently, in light of subsequent events, turns out Robert Fisk was there. There's no evidence that there was any poison gas attack at all. There was a battle going on. Apparently, during the battle, certain people came down with hypoxia, lack of oxygen, and they got taken to the hospital. And at some point, somebody shouted poison gas, and a panic broke out. And this is the story that the news media ran with.
That's right. And when you look at the footage, I mean, it's not a difficult thing to scare some children and to separate them from their parents, whatever, and then throw freezing water over them. It's a pretty easy, simple thing to kind of stage, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is the shelf life of false flag attacks is about 48 hours now. They're coming so fast, one after another. This obviously came hard on the heels of the poison gas attack, or the poisoning attack in England, which fell apart in about a week. So what you have is these increasingly desperate attempts to mobilize the forces of the West and provoke some type of confrontation. It's always shoot first, ask questions later. This is the new policy in the West. So you say something happened, and then people who say, well, are you sure that's what happened? And are you sure that's who did it? They get shouted down. The media, mainstream media, have given up all pretense of being journalists. They are all just a propaganda machine for the regimes. they join in and some type of response is demanded, whether it's withdrawing your diplomats, as in the Britain poisoning attack, or some type of military attack, which was the case in Syria. So what happened in Syria, I mean, a week ago, I feel we all were standing on the edge of an abyss. The fleet, the United States fleet, was heading toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Vladimir Putin, a month or so before, announced in his State of the Union address that Russia now had missiles that could strike any place in the world. And as he was saying this, there was a video on the background of a missile heading toward Florida. Well, the Eastern Mediterranean is a lot closer than Florida. So the question was, is Russia going to take out the American fleet? I think that they are perfectly capable of doing that. I think, in my humble opinion, that the United States is presiding over a couple $1 trillion worth of obsolete weaponry. So that could have happened, and that would have caused a conflagration. In the aftermath of Putin's speech, the Congress of the United States of America called some military leaders in and asked them basically, is this true? And the leaders said, yes. As a matter of fact, it's true. Russia can hit us anywhere they want, but we have submarines that will take out their cities after they destroy our cities. So this is cold consolation for the people of New York City, but that's the response. So that was the situation a week ago. And then it turns out that it was all political theater. The United States had arranged with Russia to blow up 3 buildings. The United States was claiming that there were chemical warfare manufacturing plants, which leads us to the question of, well, wait a minute, if it's bad to have a poison gas attack, why is it good to blow up a poison gas factory, which will lead to the spread of poison gas all over the area?
Well, exactly.
Anyway, that all became a non-question, because it turns out that the Russians were collaborating with the United States on this. The buildings had been emptied. They were not poison gas factories, so there was no danger of that. And so this strike, 1 year after the strike in Ghouta, killed no one, which is an improvement over the last time when they did that airfield. A couple of people that got killed. So we're getting better in terms of human casualties here, but it was all political theater. And now we're back to the status quo ante. The only achievement that the deep state achieved was that now Trump is not going to remove U.S. troops from Syria. So that's over. The status quo ante has been maintained, and we're still in the same mess we were in before, but it's not nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, so as you say, it's political theater, and these missiles being used, and Russia knows about it, no casualties, any of that. Probably, as you mentioned, it would make sense, probably no real chemical targets either, because obviously common sense would suggest that would kill a lot more people than the alleged chemical attacks. So it's kind of a sparring session rather than the main event, really, rather than a proper proper fight, really.
And we should all be grateful for this.
Oh, absolutely. I am grateful for it. And at the end of the day, though, as you say, then you're back to the same thing happened last year. Trump even, mentions he wants to pull out of Syria. And then we have this false flag almost exactly a year later, same scenario. And who's to gain? I mean, at the end of the day, you mentioned the deep state. Israel, my understanding of it, will gain by keeping troops in there. What's your take on who's to gain and what the whole thing? What's the end game of it?
I don't think we should jump so quickly to that conclusion,
okay,
because the net result, is one: the U.S. troops are going to remain, but they've got no place to go and they've got nothing to do, because number one, they have to support the Kurds as their proxy warriors in this thing. Kurdistan is their goal, but if they do that, they will initiate a war with Turkey. And if they do that, that will mean the end of NATO, because Turkey is a fellow member of NATO. And if you end NATO, that's the end of probably the main pillar of the United States empire right now. Okay, so you're back at square one. Tillerson tried this. Trump fired him. The problem still remains. The problem that Tillerson had is it's a no-win situation for the United States. If you support the Kurds, you're going to end up in a war with Turkey, and that's not a good idea. The other thing that we have to consider is that the Russians did respond. Okay, even though they arranged this little attack, little piece of theater, they did respond, and now they are sending their SS-300 missiles, anti-missile system to Syria. So Syria is now getting an upgrade in terms of missile defense, and this is something Syria can use against Israel, and that's a significant game changer, as we say over here. That means that that attack that the Israeli Air Force did, I don't know where it is, a month ago, something like that, where they took out some airfield. They killed 4 Iranians in the process. And in the process also, for the first time, an Israeli airplane was shot down. Okay, that's a first. So now, even with their antiquated system, before the Syrians were able to shoot down one Israeli airplane, now with an upgraded system, I don't think Israel, once the system is in place, I don't think Israel can risk attacking Syria again, and certainly not with impunity, which is what they've done in the past.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, because I think even after the event, even after the U.S. Led British strikes, there was little coverage of it in Western media, but there was, I think, a couple of days after that, there was some strikes that looked like into Homs. I think they're probably coming from Israel. Did you catch that? I
didn't see that. No.
Yeah, there was some other messages.
There were claims. Now these haven't been substantiated one way or the other, but there were claims that the Syrians shot down 70 cruise missiles.
That's right. Yeah.
There's stories on the other side that the United States basically knew it was political theater, and so they launched 100 old Tomahawks.
Right.
That basically they're going to have to throw out anyway, because they have a shelf life of whatever, and they were going to exceed that shelf life. So they fired off obsolete missiles, and they may have been shot down. So this is the big question right here. The big question is the ship, is the aircraft carrier obsolete? Do the Russians have missiles that are unstoppable? Well, this was the point of this whole little confrontation was, we don't want to know. I think that's basically what the American military said. We don't want to know. We're going to we scrupulously avoided Russian airspace during this whole thing. And as a result, we are still in unknown territory. But that may not last long, because if they deploy these S-300s, it may seal that they alone. They're not the most advanced Russian anti-missiles. But these S-300s alone may seal Syrian airspace, which would be an end of Israel's ability to attack them with impunity.
Okay, and the potential implications of all this is we're going to see an end to this kind of Western hegemony on the global front, potentially.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope we're seeing the end of the American empire. I mean, I don't like it. The fact of the matter is that the United States, the people of the United States voted to end the American empire when they voted Donald Trump as president. That was his mandate from the American people. The philosophy or the political ideology is called America First. We want a return to the American Republic. We don't want these foreign entanglements. We, the people, let's say, of the Midwest, the people I saw at the Trump rally in South Bend, Indiana, are poor. And we're poor because we're supporting these wars, constant warfare forever for the benefit of Israel and no one else. Okay, certainly not for the benefit of the people of Indiana. That's for sure. So the mandate is to withdraw as soon as Trump makes an attempt, as he did last week. The deep state reacts. So we have a contest here with who's going to go first. Is the deep state going to destroy Trump, or is Trump going to prevail? And is he going to be able to make good on the promises he made during the campaign, which got him elected?
Yeah, how do you see that going? I mean, at the end of the day, that's a risky. That's a very risky fight, even for Trump personally, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he's got no choice in the matter. They declared war on him. He's got the entire apparatus of the deep state against him. The problem here is that we all voted for America first, and what we got is Israel first, as
usual.
And so the more things change, the more they're the same. Why is this? Well, I think it's because, first of all, Trump grew up in New York City, and he's been dealing with Jews all his life, and he thinks he can handle Jews. They work for him. He doesn't work for them. He made that clear during the campaign. The fact that he's involved with the deep state in this battle with the deep state, even though the Jews obviously are part of the deep state, he thinks he can use the Jews as his way of protecting himself. They are the Israel lobby, if you want to limit it to that, is the only political force in the United States that is powerful enough to stand up to the deep state. And so as a result, you have Trump going overboard more than any other president in the United States history in going way beyond what Israel could ever expect from the United States. So the classic example was recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. No president before would ever have attempted or dared to do that. Trump, in this regard, is the anti-Obama, and Obama thought that he could finesse something with the support of liberal Jews, the so-called J Street crowd, and got the Iran nuclear agreement. Now, because Trump is the anti-Obama, he's going to curry favor with the Likudniks, who are the opposite of the J Street faction, by doing everything that Benjamin Netanyahu ever dreamed of. Mm. So I guess he feels with Benjamin Netanyahu on his side, the deep state will have to leave him alone. I think that's foolish. I think it's a crazy idea, but I think that's the idea in his head.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. All right, okay, so we've covered Syria. Let's move on then to. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and he'd never heard of the Talmud. And I was talking to him about Judaism.
Tell him he's in good company. Pope Innocent IX never heard of the Talmud, and that's like 1,200 years after Christ. So it's not a book that's supposed to be in the public library.
Right.
It's a private book for Jews, not just Jews. It's not just for Jews. It's for rabbis. So tell him not to feel bad.
Yeah, but he was fascinated and shocked, basically, which is usually the natural reaction to the Talmud. When we have the tragic phenomena of Christian Zionism today, which are a very influential group, and they seem to think that the Jews are our ancient brethren there over, and there's all this solidarity. When we talk about Judaism, I would understand, and I know you would understand Judaism very different from what the Christian Zionists would understand Judaism. Judaism is essentially Talmudism, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. Judaism is younger than Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay. The religion of the Hebrews, the religion of Moses and of Abraham, is now known as Christianity. Okay.
Yes.
That's why we have an Old Testament and a New Testament. All of that stuff in the Old Testament refers to us Christians, because as it's all very clearly stated in the Gospel of St. John, where Jesus confronts the Jews, and the Jews tell Jesus, we're the children of Moses. We're the seed of Abraham. We have sacred DNA. It's like the beginning of racism right here. And the Jews are the first racists. And Jesus just says, sorry, God doesn't need your DNA. He could take rocks and turn them into people. He doesn't need your DNA. And you don't think that you're children of Moses, because if you don't accept me as the Messiah, you're not the children of Moses, because Moses longed for my appearance. That is the crucial turning point in history. And it led to a mass confusion which exists to this day. The mass confusion is based on the fact that the Jews claim that they are children of Moses, and that's not true. They are not the children of Moses. At this point, we have the beginning of a new religion. Okay, at this point, meaning the time of the crucifixion. At this point, the Jews had no temple. That would end in 70. Okay, the temple would be destroyed in 70. They had no temple, they have no priesthood, and no sacrifice. So therefore, they can't fulfill the law. Can't do it. The only group that has the temple, the priesthood, and the sacrifice is the Catholic Church, and they are the true heirs of the Hebrews. Okay, so the Jews recognize this. So at the time of the siege of Jerusalem, during the first rebellion in 70 AD, a rabbi was smuggled out of Jerusalem. Yochanan ben Zakkai was smuggled out of Jerusalem in a shroud, went to Titus, said, "I'm a friend of Rome. Please grant me a favor. I would like to start a school." The school was at Yavna, and basically this is the beginning of Judaism. You don't have a temple, now you've got a synagogue. There's no sacrifice, so now you have a debating society, and the codification of all of these pointless debates is the Talmud. And it got written down, there were two Talmuds, the Palestinian and the Babylonian. The Babylonian is more famous, and that didn't get written down until 600 AD. Which means 600 years after the death of Christ. So it's a much newer religion than Christianity. The purpose of the Talmud, as I said in my book, The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, when the Jews rejected Christ, they rejected Logos. And when you reject Logos, you reject the entire order of the universe, including the social order, and that means you're a revolutionary. And that's what Jews have been for the last 2,000 years. They've been revolutionaries. They feel they have a license to come into any culture which accepts them as aliens, which was the European cultures, and basically destroy it from within. That's been the history of Catholic-Jewish relations. Nothing has changed. It's still the same. The same fears perdure. The fears of the apostles. The main fear was fear of the Jews. You can see it all over the place today. In England, this month, Jez Turner, who's the head of the London Forum, is going on trial because he issued a report about the Jewish police force in London and said it was unpatriotic and unconstitutional. And some Jew didn't like what he said, and now he's going to trial. And if we have both of our legal systems are systems of precedent, and so if he gets convicted, he will set the precedent now of you have free speech in England unless some Jew doesn't like what you said, unless some Jew construes what you said as hate speech, in which case you go to jail. So we're at a crucial turning point in the histories of our respective cultures. And there's a lot of pushback. But it all goes back to the Talmud, which is basically an anti-logos. The Talmud, Heinrich Graetz, who's the father of Jewish historiography, in his book, The History of the Jews, said that the morals of Polish Jews were destroyed by studying the Talmud, because all the Talmud does is teach you how to cheat and steal. Yeah. That's Heinrich Graetz. Now, if I say that, I'll be called an anti-Semite. So even if I quote Heinrich Graetz as saying it, I'll still be called an anti-Semite because of the ridiculous situation we are in right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jez. I met Jez at the tail end of last year and I had dinner with him. He's a gentleman, and I'll be going to that trial that's coming up. It'll be interesting. I went down to Alison Shablow's trial. She was, do you know Alison?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, she's a songwriter who was writing songs, let's say, questioning the main line of the Holocaust, and found herself in the dock as well. I went down to that trial as well. So,
this goes to the heart of English identity in a way, because the English pride themselves on Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park. I mean, it's part of what English feel good about themselves, and we are in many ways the spiritual descendants of Europe, of England. I mean. And we have the same type of identity here. Now, whether it's worse here or worse where you are is a matter of debate. But I mean, it's bad in both places.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worse here, Mike. I mean, you even had young Brittany Pettibone and Martin Zellner, who are two people who don't even mention Jews, Judaism, any of this stuff, and they found themselves being stopped from coming into the country. And ironically, Martin Zellner was going to give a speech at Speaker's Corner, and then Tommy Robinson went down to Speaker's Corner and read out that speech. So yeah, there's a heavy oppressive climate at the minute when it comes to free speech, and you have to be very, very careful. I've had 3 or 4 videos removed. I did a video with Andrew Joyce talking about Jewish involvement in the mass immigration into Europe, and that was just taken down. So they are lowering the boom with this stuff, you know.
Yeah, I think what this has in common with the false flag attacks is a kind of note of desperation. I have a friend who compared it to tennis when the one tennis player goes to the net. He can go to the net if he thinks he's going to end the game quickly, but you can't have a long game if you're at the net. And I think that that's the situation that the empire has reached. They're willing to stage these false flag operations that evaporate almost within 48 hours. They're over. With no consideration of the damage they are doing to their own credibility by doing this. Because I think they're desperate for some type of short-term advantage or maybe some type of short-term victory. It may be because they watched that Putin speech too. Maybe they feel there's a window of opportunity between now and when those missiles get deployed or something like that, so that they have to press the issue in some desperate way. I'm just saying it's more dangerous now than any time I remember in my lifetime since the Cuban Missile Crisis when I was in high school. And I remember long lines at the confessional during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it seems like that now.
Yeah, it does. And as you said, it does spank of desperation. They seem to be, I think the more abuse they perpetrate, the more desperate they become, and the more determined they are to close down free speech for their own safety, you know, and it does spank of paranoia and desperation, and their aggression often is their undoing because they just keep coming, and you know, how much power do these people need? I mean, they can't seem to help themselves. They're just a mad dog.
Well, I mean, look at Jeremy Corbyn. Look at that whole incident with the mural.
Exactly. Yeah.
The mural. What do you think you're going to by doing this? This is the leader of the Labour Party. That's not an insignificant group in England. And you're calling him an anti-Semite because of what? Because he said something nice about the mural?
Okay, Mike, we're going to break. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. Welcome back. I'm Paul Stevenson. This is Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com on this Friday, the 20th of April, 2018. I'm live with Mike Jones. You back with me, Mike?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So it's a good point. The mural kind of just epitomizes that aggression from Jews where they can't let anything go. And of course, all that served to do was actually brought that discussion about the whole Jews issue into the public arena in a way that it wasn't. Nigel Farage did a show about it the very next day. So it's pricked people's interest to start and look into this Jewish thing.
Yeah, I think you have to ask at a certain point whether what you're doing is counterproductive or not. And I think that's the point we have reached in both foreign policy and domestic policy. Yeah. You have a group of people who have rebelled against Logos for 2,000 years. What does that mean? You don't understand boundaries, and you don't understand measure, and you don't understand the right proportion of things and when to do and when not to do. You've got one virtue, and that's known as chutzpah. Chutzpah means pushing it beyond, pushing the envelope beyond where anyone thought it could go. Well, that means you're ruled by external parameters. You're not ruled by internal parameters like reason. And that means you're asking for a reaction. There's going to be an external reaction if you don't take control of this behavior. The only thing that will stop you is an external reaction. And that has been the story, tragically, throughout Jewish history. Yeah. They push it to a certain point. In England, in the 12th century, when everyone is groaning under usurious debt suddenly the king says, "I've had enough, kick them out." And we got kicked out. And they were out for centuries. This is the type of external reaction that I'm talking about. And it's where are the Jewish grown-ups? Where are they? Are they all ruled by the Abe? Well, Abe Foxman is retired now as head of the ADL, but are they ruled by these big Jewish organizations like the new Sanhedrin, that basically like IPAC, that whose job is to scare the average Jew to death, and panic him into promoting an agenda that will lead to the very thing you want to avoid? That doesn't make sense. Where are the Jewish adults right now? Where are they? Where are they here? Where are the guys going to step in and say, wait a minute, this is ridiculous to accuse Corbyn of being an anti-Semite because of this mural? This is ridiculous. Where are they? Where are they?
Yeah, it's a self-perpetuating thing. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They just keep repeating it over and over again. It's a bit like a guy who's, he's paranoid about his girlfriend leaving him, and he keeps abusing her, and until eventually she leaves him.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic, really, because I mean, obviously there's so much war. We've got all this degeneracy in the culture as well, and it's back to that point I was talking with my friend last night about Talmudism and stuff. Rabbi Stephen Wise said in 1924, if I'm correct, some call it Marxism, I call it Judaism. Do you want to just comment on that?
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is that all of the Jews at the time thought that Bolshevism was just a sterling example of how Jews are admirable in their desire to heal the world. They have a term for it. It's called Tikkun Olam. There's a magazine over here called Tikkun. And basically, what does this mean? Well, let's take a step back here. What exactly are you saying? You're telling me that the one group whose identity is based on the rejection of logos, which means reason and order in the universe, the social order. Your identity is based on the rejection of logos, and now you're telling me you have not only the right, but the duty to heal the world. Heal the world. That's what Tikkun Olam means. And what are the examples of this? Well, the prime example in the 20th century was Bolshevism. It was a Jewish-led political movement. And what happened? Did you heal the world? No, you didn't heal the world. You created this monstrous regime that basically lasted for 70 years, and everybody rejoiced when it was over. So you spread misery in the name of Tikkun Olam. And then as soon as that fails, well, then you're on to something else. So now the Jews have abandoned Bolshevism. Now they're on to Zionism. Well, we're up on the 70th anniversary of Zionism this coming month, okay? And has that healed the world? I don't think so. I mean, one of the main reasons for this whole charade of political theater in Syria was in many ways to cover over the murder that is going on in Gaza right now of Israeli snipers shooting unarmed demonstrators, shooting women and children, shooting reporters who have press written on the vest that they're wearing. They do this with impunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the whole world is outraged. And if you express any type of outrage at their behavior, they call you an anti-Semite. Well, this is an intolerable situation. It can't last. Maybe 70 years is the time frame. Maybe it's going to be up. I don't know how it's going to end. I'm just saying we're at the end game in a lot of different areas. And all I'm doing is I'm praying for a peaceful transition to a better world.
Yeah, and then we've got Zionism in one hand, and then we've got causing this carnage and just constant wars. And then we've got this cultural Marxist stuff, which is wrecking the country, it's wrecking the spiritual fiber of the West. Which I suppose it would be better known as political correctness. But this too is a Jewish, an idea originated with Jews. Let's talk about the Frankfurt School. You've got people like Theodor Adorno and this critical theory that came out of the Frankfurt School.
Yeah, it was a Jewish operation. The American Jewish Committee brought a lot of Jewish scholars over from the Frankfurt School and put them to work as soon as they got over here. And the result was a book called The Authoritarian Personality, the authoritarian personality was pretty much geared against Catholics. It was an attack on Catholics because at this point, after the end of World War II, the WASP elite had declared war on the Catholics, and they need Jewish intellectuals to write their books for them. And that's what this authoritarian personality was, an attack on Catholics as the defenders of the social order. That's why they're bad people. They defend the social order. So over this period of time, the attack got bigger and bigger. Now, in the United States, the Catholics had dealt with the Jews in the 1930s, and specifically with regard to Hollywood. The whole country was appalled at the type of obscene movies that Hollywood was producing in the 1920s. The WASP elite, who ran the country at that point, appointed Will Hayes to run to clean it up. He failed, and at that point, the Catholics got on board, and they imposed the production code on Hollywood, and it lasted for 31 years. And that meant that you couldn't have obscenity or nudity or ridicule of clergy and a lot of other things in the movies. The Jews broke that code in 1965 with a movie called The Pawnbroker, which was Holocaust porn. It was a cynical exploitation of the Holocaust as an excuse to put bare breasts on the big screen in Hollywood films, because Hollywood was in a death struggle with television, and a bare breast is a lot cheaper than rebuilding the Circus Maximus, which is what they had to do for Ben-Hur. So at this point, the Catholics, this is a crucial turning point because the Vatican Council had just ended. And at this point, the Catholics had felt that the Jews, they were going to say by fiat, oberter dicto, the Jews are our friends. And they wrote this document called Nostra Aetate. Didn't get what the Jews wanted, but that's okay. The Jews are our friends, and the Jews immediately used this to their advantage by destroying Catholic culture. One of the first examples was the Oberammergau Passion Play. It led all the way up to where we are today. The latest assault, Jewish assault on the social order, is gay marriage.
Sure.
Now, if I say that, culminating in the Obergefell decision of the Supreme Court. Now, as I've said this before, but if I say the Jews were behind gay marriage, everyone will call me an anti-Semite. Terrible thing to say. Well, the fact of the matter is the Vice President of the United States said that to a bunch of Jews. Joe Biden said it 2 years ago, and the Jews applauded because he said, yes, and it's a good thing. So the Catholics are forever, they can't win. They haven't won one single cultural battle since the 1930s because they can't identify their enemy, and their enemy is the Jews. Let's face it, face up to reality. Who was for abortion? Who's against abortion? You go down the line. Who's for gay marriage? Who's against gay marriage? And so on and so forth. Who's for pornography? Who's against pornography? All of these things come down to basically Catholic-Jewish split. So so Amy Dean, and I already mentioned there's a magazine called Tikkun. She writes an article in Tikkun saying if it weren't for the Jews, there would be no gay marriage. Well, once again, we've got this double standard. We both agree. I agree with you, Amy, but why am I called an anti-Semite when all I'm doing is quoting you? Why is this?
Well, exactly. And they are behind pretty much everything, which is a wrecking ball to the Christian foundations of Europe and the West, basically. I mean, every major American Jewish organization, including the Orthodox Union and Agudath Israel, supports immigration amnesty. There's a lot of, obviously, concern in Europe and in my country here in the UK and Ireland with third world immigration from sub-Saharan Africa, and a lot of fear and concern about Islam. But we have large swathes of the population who don't seem to either realize or refuse to, for whatever reason, acknowledge the Jewish involvement behind the immigration crisis into Europe. Would you would affirm that Jews are invested in this? Yeah.
Have you seen the video of Barbara Specter?
Yes, of course.
I mean, so many people have seen it, but there it is. It's like the classic Jewish expression of tikkun olam. You know, like, we are the experts in this. We understand multicultural societies. We will teach you. We will teach you, poor benighted goyim, how to get along with people, since you obviously don't know. We're experts on this. And if it destroys your culture, well, too bad. That's too bad. Now, she said this. She's on a video. You can just Google the video. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, Europe is going through its multicultural phase. She stated as a fact, but as arrogantly and as insanely as you could ever possibly imagine. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm saying, well, isn't it time that we are we allowed to object, Barbara? Is there another side to this story? Or anytime somebody in the classroom raises his hand, he's going to be denounced as an anti-Semite? What is it, Barbara? I mean, this is intolerable. It's really intolerable, and I think it's over. I think we need to end it. So there was an article in Russia Insider, and it was said, it was called, "It's Time to End the Jew Taboo." And the point of what this man is writing, it's Charles Balzman, who's the editor at Russia Insider. He said, look, you can't understand relations between the West and Russia until you factor in the Jews and their ancestral antipathy toward Russia, which is basically driving American foreign policy now. It goes all the way back to the time of the Tsar, to the time when Jews were this is before Bolshevism. I'm talking about the 19th century now, when the Jews were the cutting edge of revolution in the Pale of the Settlement, and they eventually succeeded in killing the Tsar. The reaction to that led to migrations of large numbers of Jews to the United States, and they're the people that run Hollywood now. Their descendants are the people that run Hollywood, and we still have the same issue, except that we are rendered completely defenseless because no one is allowed to criticize a Jew. It's a simple rule of life. You cannot criticize a Jew.
Yeah, that's the problem. It really is the elephant in the room. I mean, I noticed when Nigel Farage did a show on the whole Jewish thing and anti-Semitism, they've screened the calls coming in there to a large extent. So you'd have quite a few people, the majority of people were like, oh, this is horrible anti-Semitism. But when you look at the comments, you get a much better feel for the public mood. And people are very, very frustrated at not being able to talk about this Jewish issue.
Yeah, if we're going to return to a peaceful culture, we have to deal with this issue, because this is a constant story of conflict. The Jews will shut up anybody that disagrees with them. They take over American foreign policy, and they engage the United States in wars whose the only beneficiary is Israel. And I'm talking about beginning with George W. Bush. The neoconservative takeover of American foreign policy under George W. Bush, which was one of the things that prompted me to write The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit. I found myself thinking, this can't be happening. This can't be happening, and yet it did happen. And we are still suffering the consequences. And Trump was supposed to be the man who was going to solve this problem, or at least admit that it was a problem. Unlike George Bush's brother, who thought it was a great idea to send Americans over there, kill 1 million people, bring back wounded soldiers, and for a bill of $1 trillion. George W.'s brother thought that was a good idea, and Trump shut him down on national TV in one of the debates, and that's why he got elected. And now he's doing the exact opposite of what he said he was going to do in the debates.
Yeah, it was quite painful, really, to witness, because he ran on that in no small part to get out of these intervention wars. You mentioned the Catholic Church. Why have the Catholic Church become so impotent? I mean, as you well know, probably know more about the Catholic Church and the Jews and that relationship than most. Why suddenly in the 20th century, after 2,000 years of Christianity, have we seen this impotence now of the Catholic Church, which really kept these people in check?
The short answer to that question is the Second Vatican Council, and specifically the doctrine Nostra Aetate. There was large lobbying pressure placed on the church at the Second Vatican Council. There was a Jesuit by the name of Malachi Martin who had been hired as basically a secret agent of the Jews.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people knew him. He died not long ago.
He died quite a sort of painful death. Was he murdered? Wasn't he?
No, I think he fell down a flight of stairs and never recovered and died.
Okay.
But as far as I know, no one's ever claimed he was murdered. But he was hired by B'nai B'rith and the American Jewish Committee to be the secret agent at the Second Vatican Council that was going to orchestrate a change in church's teaching. The charge of deicide was supposed to be repudiated. In other words, that the Jews killed God or Christ.
Right.
Well, you can't do this. It's impossible because it's embedded in the scriptures.
Yeah.
You just can't read the scriptures. I mean, it wasn't Samoans who killed Jesus Christ, or it wasn't the Romans. But they tried to change it. It did not work. The Catholics the bishops affirmed the traditional teaching. But what happened at this point is the interpretation basically nullified the document itself. And the interpretation gave rise to what has come to be known as Catholic-Jewish dialogue. And the Vatican issued in 50, I think 2 years ago, they issued a statement, an evaluation of it, and said basically it failed. It's been a miserable failure, but we're going to continue anyway because it's such a good idea. Now, there's something wrong with people who admit that they failed and yet are still going to continue that policy. What we need, and I state this in the Jewish revolutionary spirit, is a return to the traditional teaching on the Jews. It's a policy. It's not dogmatic, but it's a policy that held for 1,500 years, and it's called Sicut Judaeus Non, which basically says, to begin with, no one has the right to harm the Jew. No one has a right to desecrate their cemeteries or interrupt their religious services. Okay, that's one part. The second part is, on the other hand, the Jew has no right to destroy Christian culture. He does not have a right to subvert the morals or ridicule the faith of Christians. That would be an abuse of power. And in keeping with this, Jews should not be professors at universities, for example. Or Jews should not employ Christian maids because they will always be exploited in unpleasant ways. The Poles forever ignored this, and there were a whole series of letters from Rome saying, no, you really shouldn't have Christian maids working for Jewish masters. It's a bad idea. Anyway, these are all particular implementations of that general principle, and I think it was successful. I think it's more successful than what we have today because in the name of tolerance, we've created a situation where the Jew has carte blanche to destroy your culture. Yeah. It's that simple. How else can you describe everything from, the pornography, the promotion of homosexuality, all this type of stuff?
Feminism, abortion.
Abortion was a Jewish operation. Bernard Mason said that. Yeah. He converted to Catholicism at the end of his life, but he said it was a Jewish operation. If you talk to somebody like George H.W. Bush, he would say, I think family planning, I think contraception is a great thing, but I'm against abortion. That was the classic WASP deal. That's why Margaret Sanger made a lot of money. But basically, abortion was Jewish. Well, we have to take all this into consideration. So you have a guy like Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia who's saying, well, we lost every battle because we were fighting secularizing activists. Well, wait a minute. That's what Amy Dean said. Amy Dean said it was the Jews who did it. And you're often shadow boxing against secularizing activists. No wonder you're losing every battle in the culture wars.
Yeah, and no wonder you're seeing, the rise. Christianity is basically the fastest declining religion in Europe apparently today, and Islam is the fastest rising religion in Europe apparently, because the secularization of Europe has left a void which has been filled by just inane, silly things, and eventually man, being a religious creature, needs more than that. So we're seeing that void being filled by a lot of things other than Christianity. And they're, by the way, as you probably know, they're about to have a vote in Ireland on abortion. Yeah, and I expect them to overturn the current abortion laws in Ireland, which will be a tragic thing for that country as well.
I know people who are familiar with the situation, and they're saying the opposite. I know how they went on gay marriage, but I think that that's kind of nebulous. it's hard to see who the victim is in gay marriage. It's very easy to see who the victim is in abortion. And I think people are telling me there's been a change of mind. We'll find out who's right when they vote. But I think you're right. There is a vacuum. And the crucial element in introducing this vacuum was the Protestant Reformation, which was certainly in England, it was nothing more than a looting operation. It was the theft of church property. So if you talk to people like Hendrick at Red Ice, you know, he invited me onto his show to do a show. He's doing a show on Christmas. So there he is. He's the pagan, Mr. Pagan, but he's wearing a Santa Claus hat, and he wants to preserve Christmas. Doesn't believe in Christ, but he wants to preserve Christmas. This is like Swedish culture. You know, I admire them because they're so attached to their culture, but it's been hanging in midair for centuries now because of the Protestant Reformation. So if you ask them, have you heard of Christianity? Oh, yeah, I know what it is. And they talk about those empty Lutheran churches that never should have come into existence in the first place. That was all looting operation. There isn't a country in Europe with a Protestant established church that wasn't a looting operation.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Have you covered this? You've covered all this in one of your books. Is that the Jewish Revolutionary Spirit? You've covered.
It's in Barren Metal.
It's in Barren Metal. All right. Okay. All right, Mike. Well, just so we avoid the ad breaks and stuff, we've got a couple of minutes just to wrap up. If you have anything else you want to add, do you want to give out your details where we can get you? People can get your books, of course.
Yeah, all the books are all available on Amazon. All my books that I've mentioned tonight.
How many have you written?
That's a good question. The reason I say that is because at a certain point, the ebook came into existence.
Right.
And I don't know how many ebooks I've written. People used to complain that my articles in Culture Wars were too long, so I just changed them into ebooks. And now they're amazed at how many books of mine they can read in one night or something like that. But so I don't know. Between ebooks and regular books, it must be like 50 books, something like that.
Wow! And your current book is what? Sorry again.
Well, I'm working on a book called The History of Logos and the Logos of History, where I'm trying to come to some type of fundamental understanding of what unites us as human beings, and that is rationality, because we're rational creatures. The article, if you want, this is going to be a while before I'm finished, but I'm publishing chapter by chapter in Culture Wars magazine. You can subscribe to Culture Wars by going on to the website culturewars.com. We send out magazines all over the world in PDF form, so you get them right away. It's not that expensive, and you can keep abreast of the discussion that we're having based on these topics in the letters column.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you very much again for coming on, Mike. It's been great to catch up again, and God bless you. And hopefully we'll have you on again in the near future.
Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure.